Good evening, and thank you so much for tuning in for tonight's book chat. My name is Melody McAllister, and tonight I'm with a good friend, even though we've never met in person, but someone I respect tremendously. Her son, Chris, is actually who composed the intro music that you just heard. And tonight I'm chatting once again with the incredible Hedreich Nichols, who has written quite a few books like What is the Black Lives Matter Movement, which we actually talked about last year on my book chat. And tonight we are talking about her newest book, Finding Your Blind Spots, 8 Guiding Principles for Overcoming Implicit Bias in Teaching. Before we get started, I'd like to give a shout out to those watching from our Alice Keeler Teacher Tech community and her Twitter. You can catch this broadcast live on Wednesday nights on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can catch the replay on these same channels. When I read the title now, Finding Your Blind Spots, how did that make you feel? When I showed you the book, What is the Black Lives Matter Movement, did you feel defensive or think about turning this broadcast off? To be honest, a few years ago, I would have changed the channel too. But the more I got to know colleagues, friends, and students and their families, I realized that the way I was brought up to think didn't always mesh with the truth that these new people in my life were telling me. I began to question my personal and spiritual beliefs. I began to wonder if those beliefs stood up to what I was learning to be the truth. Whether you are in education or another walk of life, Hedreich Nichols' book welcomes you and your reflections. If teaching and reaching every single one of your students is important to you, but you aren't sure how to get past long-held beliefs or if that is even necessary, this book is for you. If you are like me and have been working on becoming more inclusive regarding issues of race, religion, or orientation, this book will give you new insights to think through and learn from. But what I love about this book is the honesty that Hedreich shares. It's not a long book and you might finish relatively quickly, but that doesn't end the work. And if political correctness or shame and guilt have kept you from soul searching, Hedreich invites you in a gentle way, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it, so that we can be better for our students and the community around us. In a world rife with division, her words have the power to unite us. Hedreich, it is such an honor to share space with you once again. How are you doing? And can you please share a little bit with us about your background?
I am Hedreich Nichols, author and educator and speaker and podcaster, and I get to read all that right there. That's handy. Also, a mom and ed tech specialist for my district. Came out of the classroom this year after many, many years, and honestly, I am a teacher serving my district as ed tech specialist, which is a very important distinction. I also am passionate about making sure that we do our very best for every student every day, not only the ones who are just right there in our room, but really for every student every day, because I know this sounds cliche and kitschy, but it's how we build a better tomorrow.
Agreed. And congratulations on your new position, but also congratulations. This is like number 6 or number 7.
Theoretically, this is 3 because 4, 5, and 6 drop in another week on the 13th, I think.
Oh my goodness. Well, we have more book chats coming up because you've got, I memean, you've been busy this last year. How did you get it all done?
Hello, pandemic. What else was I going to do?
A lot of things, or not.
No, we were in lockdown for so much of that time. I had already started writing, but then it was, what are you doing? I've had breakfast and lunch with my child. I've had dinner with my child. So we've spent quality time together. He's a teenager. I cleaned the house. The laundry's done. What else is there to do? So I write.
I love it. And so I didn't prep you for this, but I'm going to ask you a question. I feel like your books landed on the banned book list.
Yes. There's a politician. His name is something or other Prowse, which is funny because that makes him really, white doesn't exist, but actually Kraus is German. So he's, he's still like, dude, you're an immigrant too. What are you talking about? So he has pulled 850 books that he believes are either CRT. And I say that because people confuse culturally responsive teaching with critical race theory, which is actually a college level, grad level kind of a course that talks about how how racism interweaves itself into systems and what those consequences are, which nobody's teaching in K-12. But Anyway, most people understand critical race theory to mean theories that are critical about issues around race. And that actually is not in it. At any rate, so he has taken it upon himself to pull what is Black Lives Matter? He's pulled what is anti-racism, and he pulled Topics for Change, which is a combination book of 3 from that racial justice series. And a lot of the districts here in Texas are pulling them all, and there are a lot of books that talk about things around the LGBTQ issues and representation. They pull those and have said that those are obscene. A lot of great authors, even Kendi, Toni Morrison. So I'm in really, really wonderful company, and so I'm somewhere torn between, wow, yeah, I'm on a banned book list. Yes, I've arrived. And oh God, I hope they don't come and do parades in front of my house because I've literally seen that. So,
Right. And it's so sad. I have actually read this and with my kids, and it is not something that I mean, it's sad that it's on the banned book list. And you talk about this in your new book, Finding Your Blind Spots, but you know, we tend to push things out of our lives because we take on a lot of shame and guilt. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit deeper, but it's like it's good to be uncomfortable. We should be uncomfortable. You're not trying to make anybody feel guilty or shame. That's not what drives change. But it's sad that those books have been banned without really being read, because if they would have just read them, and you talk about this in your book too, that like it's okay, you can love your country, you can think that we live in the greatest country in the world, but still question the system, still wonder if we can be better, still question if everybody is telling the truth. It doesn't mean that you're not a great citizen or that you don't care. It doesn't mean that our country isn't great. And I think that that's what I love about your book. I have, in my own journey, to be more inclusive, I have fudged a lot of stuff. I have maybe ruined friendships because of coming across too strong, or just like the smoker who stops smoking and can't stand to be around. I have made a lot of mistakes. And I feel terrible about that, but that's what this book, Finding Your Blind Spots, 8 Guiding Principles. We're going to talk about this for overcoming implicit bias. How were you able to write this in such a gentle and welcoming way? And why did you decide to write it?
I think, my main why, my big why is always comes back to my son. He has experienced so many of the same things that I experienced growing up. And so that means that there has not yet been enough progress. And classrooms, like I said, it's not kitsch, it's really the truth. Classrooms are the places where our future is shaped. We teach our kindergartners to use your kind words and share. And then we go on Facebook and social media and we're awful to one another. It's like, remember what you learned in kindergarten. It still carries today. It's still, if you can't, what did grandma say? If you can't say something nice,
don't say it at all.
See? I did a whole keynote and I said, type it in the chat, guys. It was virtual because, COVID. And everybody knows that. And yet we don't adhere to that, And I am really careful about the way I say things, because that determines finally whether or not we can get results. I could argue my point because I'm right and it's just too long. We had Martin Luther King was marching for this and we haven't made it. And now they're turning back voting rights. But you can't hear that. You're a mom, so you know how it is. If I scream at my kid, he will comply because I'm his mama and he will comply. But did he understand why it is that I don't want him to make whatever choice he made? Those are the conversations that I have with him when I'm calm and I say, son, this is what I need and this is why I need it. And then he can understand and say, Mom, I see your point. But when I scream at him, he doesn't say, I see your point. Mm-hmm. And so we talk about, you got to get uncomfortable with being you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We say that all the time. Right. And let's be honest. America is full of fat people because we don't really like to be uncomfortable. We want to have the cheesecake at night. It's like, it's uncomfortable to sacrifice. We do it for our kids. We maybe do it for our families, but just really, the whole no pain, no gain. They're the gym rats, and then there's the rest of the world who's fighting all the fat diseases, and that's sad. But it's a kind of this. We don't like to be uncomfortable. And
It's
so if
great.
you can find an entry that lets people get, it's like when you work out, you don't just go and grab the big weights. You work out with the 2 pounds, then the fives, and then you work up to the tens, and then you go and you grab you grab the bar. And that's something that people can usually get their head wrapped around. You know what I mean? Small bites, baby steps.
Right.
And that's what's important. And you can be as right as rain, but if you are saying things in a way that makes people throw up walls, you won't get the results you have. And our babies need the results. They need people to understand.
That's so true. And my friend Mervin is watching, and I just want to say hi to him. He's also a leader in this space, and I want to say hi to him. I'm so glad he's watching. And your foreword is pretty amazing. Walter Greason, he writes, "Finding your blind spots marks the emergence of a new day in global education, in which educators have the resources and reach to share the most impactful techniques for students and their families. I am a proud member of Hedreich Nichols Peer Learning Network, and I urge every teacher and educator to consider her insights about the teaching and learning processes." That's just a little tiny bit of this forward. That's pretty amazing.
And
How does that make you feel?
he is incredible. So I mean, that kind of praise coming from him. I'm just, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And it's true. Yes, yes. Wow. I agree, Mervin. I'm so thankful that you're watching. So something that you talk about in the beginning of your book, you share your story, why it's so personal, like being the only Black friend, actually growing up in the 70s when schools, especially in Texas, were just starting to desegregate and feeling so alone, but also feeling kind of outside with your peer groups, whether they were what is the word, whether they were your white peer group or they were your Black peer group. And also you talk about all the different labels that you've encountered in your life, even in the year 2020 alone. I mean, you talk about all of this, and it's pretty freaking amazing. But you really talk about othering, and I'm not sure that we talk about this enough, but what do you mean by othering, and why is it so dangerous?
You know, Othering begins in infancy. It's really the whole book is about cognitive biases and how they end up on steroids and kind of growing out. It's kind of like, the appropriate flora in your body, and then too much of it, you get thrush, you get yeast infections. That's really a gross way to put it, but it's when good stuff goes out of control. I said thrush. I'm talking about the stuff in your
Yes,
mouth.
yes, yes, it's right in your mouth. Okay.
Yeah. So, the thing about bias is a baby has actually kind of, the first there's nothing, but then there's mom. You know what I mean? There's mom, and sometimes babies don't even want to go to dad. It's just mom. That's their. Everyone else is an other. Mom belongs to me, and everyone else is an other. And then we kind of encompass. Okay, these are my sibs, my dad, our dog. These are my people, and then outside of this, those are others. And so that's kind of how it starts. But when we begin to, oh, wait, I am the cheerleader. And oh my God, did you see what she had on? That's the kind of othering that starts to happen in elementary, upper elementary, middle school, high school, where we use othering as a way generally to make ourselves feel better and superior. And it has a lot to do with how we feel about ourselves and how we love ourselves and accept ourselves, which is another book. But that's kind of how it starts. And we other people in ways that are generally unkind. And the way we other has to do with I am better than you are, almost always. I'm a football player. You can't even do a chin up. That's an other kind of thing. It should not matter. The person who can't do a chin up might be, end up being valedictorian. And yeah, I can't do a chin up.
I couldn't either in gym class. I couldn't do it. Right. And you talk about othering. We don't even know sometimes, like we could have great intentions. We don't even know sometimes that we're othering. But when we start talking about others and we start thinking of ourselves like, well, we don't have to worry about this because other people are doing that, not us. I mean, and you talk about this whole book is about finding your implicit bias. And when you start speaking of others, that's how you find it. It's sneaky. You don't even know that you're doing it. And like, I don't even know that I had like this epiphany that I have racist practice. I could definitely say like at one point in my life, I was pretty racist. And I don't, it's hard to say that out loud. It's hard to even speak it, even though I know I've made a lot of changes to be more inclusive. But to be honest, that's what our intentions do to us. They blind us to what our actions are doing and how we are othering people. And that, and it's so dangerous because we'll keep on doing that and perpetuating grouping people, stereotyping, discriminating without even thinking about it because we're like, our intentions are okay. But that
And
doesn't, that's
Melody, we do it in our own family. You know what I mean?
right.
There's usually, especially if you have multiple siblings, there's usually the black sheep sibling, the troublemaker sibling, you know what I mean? There's, I'm mom's favorite, your dad's favorite, and then there's Jenna. Oh, Jenna's in trouble again. Oh, we got to go get Jenna. That's an other. That's exactly how it begins. And it always has to do with putting people on the outside of your in group. And
Yes.
everybody wants to feel like they belong. And so it's really kind of it's the reason I like dogs, because people can just be so persnickety and mean why can't everybody be a part of our in group, at least to some degree?
Right.
I'm saying, your kid is my kid. I mean, you know what I mean? I
Right.
love that kid. He's a part of my in group, in a way. I have a connection to you. And so then I connect to your kids. And when I see them on social media, it's like, oh yeah, that's Melody's family. That, and I've never met any of them. I can't even
Right.
call them names. I have my own personal nickname for your 4-year-old. But
Yes. And something I love, and Dr. Mervin, I am so glad he's watching. Yes, thank you. If you guys haven't connected, I'll have to connect you. But something that you say in your book, when you're trying to practice getting beyond that othering, you suggest starting with your family. That's pretty, like, I had never thought about that, but it hit me pretty hard because there's so much divisiveness within our family. And you even say that, like, and you can tell them, hey, like, I'm trying to get to know you better. I'm trying to get outside of my bias towards you, or you don't use it in those words, or you can just start trying to mend that relationship. Like, you don't have to say, I'm trying to mend this relationship with you. Like, you can just start doing it. And that really impacted me. So I want to say thank you, because even if you've been on this road of trying to be, more inclusive, to reach more people, more students, to learn the truth about life, to get past that, like what you've grown up to think was true, like, it's not, you don't have to wait for some like big lightning or anything. You can literally start with who is in front of you. And yeah.
And it's important because usually when somebody it's finding your blind spots, 8 guiding principles for overcoming implicit bias. And when people say implicit bias, oh, it's a book about black and white, it's a book about race. It's not. It's a book about belonging. And
Right.
othering has much more to do with who we were in middle school than it does with race. And
And
when
you
you
talk, yes. And you talk about, like, everybody, like, if, like, people you don't feel comfortable with, you talk about your belief systems, and you shared some pretty personal stories that made me cry, like, about, like, church. Like, I experienced some very similar situations. And it's like, how do you get past your religious beliefs to reach those students that you don't understand? Maybe they're in the LGBTQ community and you're not prepared to deal with that, but you love them. You realize that they are, so when you think about your own children, you cannot imagine, like, somebody feeling so unsafe because of who they are as a person, that they would want to hurt themselves or kill themselves, or to be bullied just because they are being who they are. I mean, you address it all. But I'm just curious, how did you decide on 8 principles? And we could talk about those 8 principles, or name them if you want.
yeah, I'll go ahead and name them. And I'll say that in my journey, and I say that my journey as a student prepared me for my journey as a teacher. So and then all of those prepared me for my journey as a mom, which prepares me for my journey. So in my journey, these were just the 8 most critical points. And the first one, of course, is just about belonging, because
Right.
if you can connect to the way we other, like I say, one of the workshops I do has exclusively to do with who teachers were in middle school and who they have the most difficult time dealing with in their classes. And
Yes.
usually whoever the other was in middle school is the same. Those are the kids that they have a hard time relating to.
Oh, I love that you said that. So, 8 principles that you decided on, and I think this would have to be super hard as a writer, author, speaker that you do, all of the knowledge that you know and the research that you've done. But the first one is bias and belonging. The second one, bias, guilt, and accountability. The
Oh, and
third
that
is
was super important because we get so hung up with guilt and making people feel bad and all that kind of stuff. And then, or either like you say, becoming the awful ex-smoker who's always going off on people. That one's huge. You have to get beyond that because it's just there's some sort of guilt that kind of gets you, propels you to moral action, but often it can paralyze. And
right.
that's what we want to give people the opportunity to say, hey, it's just another emotion. Get over, there's discomfort and there's shame. You shouldn't have any shame. Whatever happened. How can we
Right.
change things going forward? That's kind of where we are.
Right. What if it's not helping you to move forward, if you're not helping others to move forward, then you're basically yelling at people and turning them away from what they need to see. The third one is bias, labels, and language.
And that one's important because we often don't know what the terms are. I say in that chapter, I've been colored, Negro, black little b, black big B, BIPOC, black, indigenous, person of color, and some occasionally, of course, the N word. But I've been all of those things in my life. And that's a lot for people to keep up with. Well, what's appropriate now? Are you colored? Are you Negro? Most people know that that's not it. But people say, I watch people stammer over Black or African American often because they're not sure which term is correct now. So,
Right. Now, I loved that chapter. I appreciated it. I learned a lot from that. Your fourth principle is bias in curriculum. And we're going to skip that because you're going to read in just a minute. Bias in cultural expression.
oh, that one's so important. My kids, we have a large, well, I'm out of the classroom, but most in my classroom, I had a large group of Spanish speaking kids. And, I encouraged them to do their turn and talks in their home language, whatever it does not make, actually, it expands your learning. It does not make you unable to use academic English language. It expands your ability to do critical thinking and to really reason through a lot of things, even if you're talking about literary elements or you're talking about historical or scientific concepts. Same thing with AAVE, African American Vernacular English. You want to build a bridge from that to academic language so that when they're in those spaces, they can use those terms, but you don't want to make people feel dumb because they don't use academic language. You're a teacher. That's what your job is. So you bridge over to it and let them, I don't care if a kid talks to me in patois to explain a concept. And then I say, okay, now can you say that in all the like highfalutin literary terms? Oh yeah, I can do that. But that way it's much less, it's not a shaming.
Right.
Please don't say that. Please, stop saying B. Oh, he be tripping. Why? Well, so it's AAVE. It's okay. There's room for that. So it's important to make room for that and not judge intelligence based on what we believe intelligence should sound like.
Right. I love that you shared that. And I want to say to Dr. Mervyn Jenkins, thank you for joining us. And I hope I talk with you later. I'm going to go through these next few and we're going to get to your author read in just a second. But the next few are bias, gender expression, and sexual identity. And this was an amazing chapter. Bias and representation and bias in action, avoid missteps. I loved that. And you can't, you could not mention every single thing. There's just so much, and that's what keeps people away from doing this work a little bit because they feel like it's so much. But you give a starting point, and no one's going to get it right all the time. You mention that as well. You take responsibility for it and you move on. This I'm sorry story, right? So, and it's all right. We've all been there. Okay. So now we are to my favorite part, the author read. And there were several places that I was like, oh, this would be so powerful if Hedreich read. But I feel like we picked something from your book that is like really special to the time and place of our current world. Do you want us to tell us a little bit about that, Hedreich?
So this one is bias and representation, and I think it's super important. It's perfectly suited to this month, to Black History Month, because we represent during Black History Month or Hispanic Heritage Month or Native American Month in November. That's when we represent Pride Month in June, but we don't actually weave all of the stories of Americans throughout all contents every day. And that's our highest goal.
I love that.
All right, let's see. Chapter 7, Bias and Representation. During a professional development session I attended, teachers asked if celebrating months, National Native American Heritage Month, Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, and so on, was being culturally responsive. If you're like most teachers, you would probably answer yes, as they did. I decidedly did not answer yes. Marginalizing the stories of a cultural group 11 months out of the year is certainly not culturally responsive. While the intent behind these designated months is good, it is a practice that celebrates the superior position of a dominant culture by making outliers of the groups that do not belong to the dominant culture. There's history, and then there's Black history. There's heritage, and then there's Hispanic heritage. There's the story of Plymouth Rock, the American history, and then there's the story of the Wampanoag. Same story. The problem is that all of these stories are American history. If educators are being culturally responsive, the various stories and perspectives of the inhabitants of America should be a part of daily curriculum. That's not to say that these designated times are completely without value. Months celebrating diversity have been a good place to start, especially for a country unused to multi-perspectivity. And that word means pretty much what it sounds like, multi-perspectivity. The tradition began with Negro History Week in February of 1926, a week dedicated to the study of the Black past, started by Carter G. Woodson. His idea was to focus on the countless Black men and women who had contributed to the advancement of human civilization. But alongside this focus, he cautioned against ignoring Black stories during the rest of the year. He advocated that achievements of Black people be taught in schools and communities throughout the year, not only in February. A time of celebration of Black achievement would not be recognized by the government for another 50 years when Black History Month became official. Hispanic Heritage Month was made official in 1988, National Hispanic Month, and that opened there we go, and that opened gates to months celebrating Indigenous people, Asian people, Pacific Islanders, Jewish people, women, and the LGBTQ plus community. No doubt there are more to follow. However, maybe before you fill your calendar, you can fill your classroom, campus, and curriculum with celebrations of diversity in ways that equitably honor everyone's stories every day.
Mm.
That's why the seventh guiding principle is to ensure representation throughout the year, not just during designated months.
I love that. It's so right. And it just means so much for the people that we serve, for the students that we serve. It is just I love that. Thank you for sharing. I'm kind of like it was hard for me. I had to practice a lot of this because it makes me really emotional. But the thing is that, we've allowed people to be marginalized for way too long. We've allowed people to feel like they're outsiders. And I love that you said that this book is about belonging, and everybody wants to belong. Everybody should belong. It, yeah, I don't want to. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before we go to, I wanted to ask you, like, what are you most proud of in your life?
My kid. My son is this really amazing human being who is going to be 18 in 2 months and 13 days, but who's counting? And he's just, it's been the two of us since he was almost 7. So we've been together for 10 years, just the two of us. And his dad's still in his life, but as far as the bulk of it, it's mom and him, because his dad lives still in Switzerland. So that is an amazing accomplishment. When I look at him, I'm just so proud, so proud. And
He's
he's
an amazing and talented young man. Again, he is the one who made the intro and outro music that I share every week on my book chat. And so what was it like to put so much of like your love and your life and your stories in this book?
Um, it was absolutely perfect. I felt it. It really kind of wrote itself. You know what I mean? It's like everything was. It's like I was collecting. You know, it was like I was collecting a dowry. And you buy a little of this, you buy a little of that, and you buy a little of this, and then at some point you have this wonderful trunk of all of these things that you've collected. It felt like that. And so it was good to put those stories, to give some of the hardships or the difficult moments or even the funny moments a purpose, for them to
Right.
have a larger purpose and to be able to share that. And I think the other thing I'm most proud of is, I wrote 6 books, man.
Yeah.
5 nonfiction books for 4 through 8, grades 4 through 8, and then this one. Oh, look at
Yeah.
I
I
got
need to have all of them.
look
I'm
at this.
starting
This
all
is
of them.
what my room looks like. My front room now.
Yes.
I got like all the books. Look, I got them all.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I need them all. I need them all. How does Chris feel about this?
He's super proud. I mean, it's really cool if I'll tell him, hey, guess what? I got a call. I'm gonna go and do a workshop down so and so and so. He goes, Mom, that's really awesome. Or like this one, the dedication is
Yes.
it simply says, for my son, my inspiration. And he didn't know. So, can I have it, Mom? Yeah, look here. Oh, wait a minute. No, I had told him. I did tell him. But when I told him, he was like, oh, Mom, just me? I said, yeah, baby, just you.
That is so cool because I know I do follow you. You have small bites that you do almost every week, and it's in your link tree. I will drop that again in the comments because everything is on Hedreich's link tree. You can find her books, you can find her small bites, but you talk about how just having him in your life is like the motivation to want people to do better. Like you do worry about him, rightfully so. So I feel like your creation and your putting yourself out there has probably given him also the confidence to continue to create and to explore his talents as a person.
Absolutely. And I mean, when you talk about it being the why, he said, so he listens and he'll say, Mom, I never learned any of that in school. I said, yeah, I know,
Wow.
baby. That's why I do what I do. That's exactly why I do what I do. And hopefully it'll be different for your kids.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So we're going to be, both of us are going to be in the same place next week. I'll get to hug you for real. I'm going to bring my book for you to sign. You've already signed this one. Of course, you sent this one to me, but this is going to be so amazing. Please check out Hedreich. Like I have it on the ticker on the bottom. You can find her at Hedreich on Twitter, at Hedreich Nichols on Instagram. If you follow the hashtag Small Bites, that is where she helps. She just educates a little bit at a time so that you feel invited and you feel like you belong. Before we say goodbye, do you have any last words that you'd like to share?
There's one other thing I'm super proud of, and that is that
Go ahead.
people keep saying your tone is so welcoming. It really is inviting, and it really, it makes people be okay with wherever they are and just jumping in. And that, I think, is that's my heart's desire. And I think that's probably the other thing. No, that is the other thing that I'm so proud about, that I have I am coming across the way I intended, so that, even people who think, what? No, I don't want to talk, that they maybe will go, well, that didn't sound so bad. Let me hear more. So that.
I will have to say that, yes, when I was reading your words, I felt like I was having a conversation with a good friend. And honestly, you are my good friend, but like if you weren't, I feel like it would have still been the same. But yes, your gentle way of inviting others into others to help belong, like it literally is. I love that you said this is a book about belonging, and it felt that way. And it was an emotional read. I had to explore a lot of my thoughts. And I want to be more like you. And I've told you this a few times. I want to be that person. I want to invite people along the journeys. This is not something you can't do. This is something that I can do, that you can do, and that we should be doing, because people are worth it.
People are worth it.
You know, people are worth it. So thank you so much. This is always the awkward part because I have to get that outro in there. And I hope that as you enjoy it, that you will know that this is Chris. This is your baby who made this music. Don't drop off. Stick around. Everybody, we'll see you probably in a couple of weeks. I don't know. I might go live at TCEA with some authors. So if you're watching and you're going to TCEA and you're an author, bring your book. Let's talk. And I'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.